Web psychologist Natalie Nahai, welcome to us.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you very much for welcoming me to Sweden. You do things very early over here, which is quite exciting for me. I'm shot up on coffee. My name is Natalie Nahai. I am a web psychologist, which means that I'm interested in what influences our behaviors and our actions online. Now, we only have a short time together this morning, so I'm going to go through this fairly swiftly. In the research, I recently released a book, I'm also an author on the subject, and in my research I found that whatever way that you approached online experience, there seemed to be three key cornerstones for being successful or influential online. And these three are, number one, to know who you're targeting. Who is your customer? What decisions do they make? What motivations inspire them to take certain actions? How do we communicate persuasively with them? Once you've identified and understood their needs, how do you use psychological principles or persuasion techniques to engage with them in a more meaningful way? And then number three is how to sell with integrity. This is quite a controversial area. Whenever you're using persuasion techniques or influential techniques, which affect all of us, you have to have a cornerstone of integrity. If not because you believe in it yourself, which I do, but because if you're a large company and you don't do that, with social media comes transparency, it also comes accountability. So if you don't perform with integrity, you'll get taken down. So there's high incentives on either side. So I want to set up the scene for you about what web psychology is. So I think we'll do a little thought experiment here. Now imagine that I give each one of you a very fast, very beautiful car. Picture your favorite car. Mine would be a Maserati. And I say to you, okay, I want you to get from A, here, to B, some other destination. If you make it successfully to B, a pot of gold awaits, massive pot of gold. Okay, so the incentives, the stakes are quite high. The thing is, you've got to go there without a map, and every time you take a wrong turn, you have to start the level all over again. No one has ever completed first time round. But there's also a secret. Written by people who've gone before you, there is a layout of the territory that you can use to help you get to B. The thing is, this isn't just a game. This is the analogy that I use for the game that we play every single day when you try to connect with people online. Whether you want it to be your blog that's read by more people, or you want people to sign up to your newsletter, or you want to sell them something, you need some clues as to how to get those people to do those things. So the car is your customer that you're driving. The territory is the web, the website, the app, whatever it is, the platform. And the journey that you take is their user experience. If you take too many wrong turns, they'll leave. You'll never get to the finishing point. B, pot of gold, which is the point of conversion, getting them to make that click. And the map, the secret map, is web psychology. It gives you insights as to why people do things and why different people do different things. So at least it gives you a sense of the territory, a sense of why things are happening the way that they are. It's not a silver bullet approach, but it will help you to create a process that will be more effective. So I have defined web psychology as the empirical study of how our online environments, whether that's email, a website, an app, influence our attitudes and our behaviors. The reason I defined this new term was because I found that in a lot of academic research there's some exciting stuff going on across all these different siloed disciplines, but there was no one bringing these together in an umbrella term at a point of convergence where you basically see how they interact to create a holistic approach. And so that's what I started researching was, well, what can neuroscience tell us about online behavior? What about human-computer interaction? How does the difference between this piece of software, piece of tech, and a laptop or a screen differ in the way that I'm configured as a user to interact? Also, cross-cultural psychology, which I find very exciting. Every single thing that you do online reaches, more or less, a global audience. How do you extract meaning from that? Other things, social psychology, neuroaesthetics, which is the study of how we respond to visual stimuli at a brain activity level. Very exciting stuff. And various other areas, including behavioral economics, which I'm going to do an experiment with you in a sec, which is the study of why we behave in irrational ways, which is fascinating. Okay, so broadly speaking, if you're going to be marketing to people online, communicating, selling to people online, you have to know about their context, about their psychological context, both as an individual, which can be their age, their gender, their personality, and culturally. So whether you're in Sweden, which is more, according to Hofstede, I think, you need to check this with me, more feminine culture, more collectivist, versus the UK, which is a bit more masculine. So what difference does that make between one culture to the next? First cornerstone, to know who you're targeting. Now, I'm not going to go into great depth here, but this is kind of an outlay of some of the things that you might want to know about your customers, your target audience. In the top left-hand corner, I've pulled out the work of the godfather of behavioral economics, Daniel Kahneman. Has anyone heard of him? Yeah? A couple of people. If you're interested in marketing and figuring out what makes people click, read his book. It is one of the best things that you can do. The knowledge in it is incredible. He discussed the brain in terms of a metaphor where there are two systems. System one is fast, it's unconscious, it's automatic, it's intuitive, it's the freeze, fight, and flight response. It's the part of the system that we consider to be subconscious, the animal part. And that's the thing that keeps us alive. It's the emotional side. On the other hand, can you all hear me okay? Because I think this mic's going, okay, stop me if you can't. On the other side, there's system two, which is the logical, the rational. It's laborious, it's labor-intensive. And also, it's intentional. It requires dedicated, conscious thought to make it happen. In the West, we tend to be quite scientific. We like to think of ourselves as rational. We believe that we are seated in system two. How wrong we are. There's so much research that has shown that actually most of our behaviors stem from system one, which is why it's important to understand what goes on beneath the surface. Other elements, which I shall briefly touch on, include personality traits. There's an anthropologist in the States called Helen Fisher, who has done a lot of work at extracting neurochemical, hormonal, biological bases for personality traits, and these are just some of them. And if you want to have another book to read, I highly recommend her book called Why Him, Why Her by Helen Fisher, and it talks about how these biological elements influence our expressions, our personalities, and then these also influence our behaviors online. So if you are someone who has high dopamine levels, you're a risk taker, and you like novelty, the kind of actions you'll take online will probably not bear in mind whether there's a consequence for your privacy. You'll do things more impulsively. You're more likely to be someone who gambles. You're more likely to want something which is going to be exciting and novel and new content. If you're a builder with high levels of serotonin, you'll be more cautious. You'll want a methodical approach, something which is more transparent, higher transparency, higher privacy, higher security, and you want to be reassured of your safety online. If you are someone who is a negotiator high in estrogen, which can be men or women, you're more of a strategic thinker. You're also probably much more prone to linguistic expression. So you might be a blogger, a journalist. You're probably more likely to be on Twitter. If you're a director, you're blunt. You're going to be much more goal-oriented and competitive. So how do you reach out to those people? You give them the tools so they can rise up and be better than the rest, which sounds quite dark, and I am simplifying quite substantially here, but the idea is that if you can build up a picture of your audience, and the chances are there'll be a mix of these traits in each of us and also in the audience, you can figure out how best to communicate with them persuasively. Okay, how are we doing for time? Right. So I wanted to do an experiment. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to see you this morning, but I can, so we'll see if this works. I've had mixed results at the university the last 2 days, and if it doesn't, I'll explain it. Okay, is there a magazine in Sweden that is very popular? Like in the UK, we've got Wired magazine, which all the digi and tech people read. Is there like a magazine here? What's the name of the magazine? PC magazine? Okay, we'll go with that. Thank you. So, okay, I want you to imagine that I'm giving you a subscription offer for PC Magazine or for a magazine of your choice. These are your options. I'm sorry it's in dollars. This experiment was carried out originally in the States. So you can either have simply an online version of this magazine for $59, or you can have a print version for $125, or you can have online and print for $125. Who of you would go for option one, online for $59? Okay, some of us. That's maybe a third. Who would go for the print version? 1, 2. 2, okay. Who would go for the online and print version? Okay, the substantial majority, probably about 70-ish, 70-80%. Okay, this is good. This is going along with the research. Otherwise, you know. Okay, and what about now? What choice, who would go for the online version if you only had these 2 options? Online version for $59. What about option number 2, online and print for $125? Okay, that's interesting. So the first group for that one, online, more of you would have gone for online. This is in fact exactly what the researchers found. And you'll note between scenario 1 and scenario 2, those 2 end options don't change, do they, financially? You get exactly the same thing. The only difference is the middle option, yes? Right. This is what they found when they did this research. That when, like you, they got given only 2 options, the vast majority of people went for the cheaper version, online. Why do I want to pay $125 if I get the online anyway? What do I need the paper for? We post-rationalize that decision. But with those same exact 2 options, the majority switches side and goes to the more expensive version when you throw in a middle third option. Why? Logically, according to classical economics, when we're rational agents, this should make 0 difference whatsoever to our intentional, rational, logical minds. That's the point. We're not logical and we're not rational. When we're given that third option in the middle, no one went for it at all. Suddenly you had 84% go for the expensive option. There are many reasons why. One of them is because suddenly you're anchored at a higher price. If you believe that the print version, the expensive version, is $125, then the next option, I get print and online for no extra money, seems like good value, doesn't it? Okay, so this is just an example of how we're all duped by this sort of irrational thinking all the time. Online, this also translates. Of the next 3 websites, there is one thing that I want to draw your attention to. They're all selling a service, and they all give you 3 options. This is a different way in which 3 options work. I mean, you'll sort of begin to see the complex picture. In this one, the center option is highlighted. It's also given the hotter colors, which in contrast to the blue means that we're more likely to respond to it. And we respond to hotter colors like red, orange, and yellow by being physically aroused. Our heart rate tends to increase, our energy levels increase. Yes, and so we recommended the middle option. Now what's interesting is that in the real world, offline, when we go to a store, if we're buying something that we've never bought before, the partners sent us out and they said, right, I want you to go and get strawberry jam. You go to the shop, you don't usually buy strawberry jam, and you think, which one am I going to get? You turn up, you basically usually will go for whichever option is horizontally in the middle and vertically in the middle. Go for it, bang, done. Because it limits your thought process. You don't have to spend your limited, precious, attentional resource, conscious resource on making a decision. You also find this in wine experiments. People tend to go for the middle option, or if they're on a cheap date, they'll never go for the bottom option, they'll go for the one up, which seems to be true. So if you're in doubt and you want to sell something, limit people's choices, give them 3 options, highlight the center one, and then you're already applying to those natural biases. So communication, persuasive communication. You probably all know that storytelling is the most persuasive form of communication known to man and to womankind. And we've been using different versions of this since we could talk or communicate, whether it's through video now, which is a very visual form of communication, or through storytelling, through word, or through music. Researchers have found that actually what happens when you have a story or you establish some sort of rapport with someone, the brain of the speaker, in this case hopefully me, and the brain of the listener, you, if we're all engaged, the brain activity will sync up. So essentially, there is a bit of a time delay because you have to be able to process what the speaker's saying. But if you're engaged, the brain activity will literally get on the same wavelength. So for that moment that you are in that story, that's the shortest distance intellectually and emotionally between 2 people, which is potentially very, very persuasive. And researchers found that actually if you want to increase the empathy levels of students, of people, of children, of adults, get them to read fiction, because you're having to assume a different personality. And you create this empathy precisely because of this. The system involved is called mirror neurons, and it's quite interesting. You can read up about it. And I want to give you a bit of an example about not so much about storytelling, but about directing people's perception based on their limited attention spans. And we're going to look at a case study that was done by a neuroscientific lab organization based out of Germany and also 2 US institutions for neuroscientific research. Their name is iQuant, and they basically set up or extracted a computational neuroscientific model that predicts within 90% accuracy of real trials with live people the perceptual paths when we visit a website, which is great. This is a study that they did with Groupon in Germany in 2011. The highlighted spots show where they landed perceptually on the website, where they looked. And this is for the first few seconds, 3 to 5 seconds of a visit. You can see top left, high contrast, black and white. We like that. The primitive brain really always pays attention to high contrast. And then it spots about the page. What do you think this page is for? It's Groupon. What action do they want you to take? To buy, to sign up, to get something. Can you see the bit where they've got actually the bit where you would sign up? The entry fields. People are completely missing it. So the whole goal of the website is lost. So their goal with iQuant was to get people to sign up. This was option number 2. You can see that people are starting at the top left-hand corner, which is what you get in Western sites. You start at the top left, and it's dipping down, again, past the sign-up form, straight down to the offer. What they did in that case was to make the website much more simple. They reduced the size of the bottom section, and they made the background white. They also created a red hot button, so that, again, you've got that contrast. In the third and final iteration, you finally see the perceptual path crosses the line of the sign-up form, and enough to see the offers at the bottom. In just 3 main changes on this website, they managed to increase their conversion rate by the simple process by 52%, which is enormous. It's huge. And so you can see, if you understand what kind of things attract people, in this case, you've got to limit the amount of information, keep the key information so that it has white space around it, draw attention to it, use techniques such as high color contrast between the black and the white in the logo, red button versus a neutral green or blue background, and you can actually really shape and predict where people will go and use that to direct them in a conscious way. You're doing it consciously, they're doing it unconsciously. I also wanted to talk with you a little bit this morning about the gender divide, especially when it comes to aesthetics and usability of sites. Research has found that women and men, generally speaking, have different neural responses to artistic and natural stimuli. It was seen in this research, it was done in the States, but it was cross-cultural, that women tended to prefer abstract art than men, and that when they looked at a painting, they'd look in different patterns of eye gaze. Now, the internet is a bit different because we're configured as users to use websites in particular ways. So if you're in the West, you will tend to look at the top left-hand side. Ooh, this thing's falling out. The top left-hand side, and then you'll either go in an F pattern across the page, so along the top and down the side, or in a Z pattern. Start at the top, across the navigation, down and across. It's fairly standard. But there are differences in the way in which we approach and appreciate websites, especially in individualistic cultures. Now, I realize that in Sweden, you're slightly more collectivist. Hang on. Okay, just need to get them there. Slightly more collectivist than in some other cultures like the UK, but there are some gender differences that still arise. I'm sorry, I'm such a newbie. Is that better? Okay. Thanks for your patience. I also do comedy. Okay, so these websites, the 2 that I've chosen them because they're kind of stereotypically aimed at, who's this for? Men. Who's this one for? Women. And you giggle because we see this, you go, oh, that's so obvious. It is obvious, but it's effective. The number of times that my fiancé and I have sat of an evening in front of our respective screens looking at stuff, and he's on 4 different screens. He's got the TV on, he's got his phone on, feeding dinosaurs, racing cars, looking at this kind of stuff, reading research. And then I'll be there going on a shopping website, usually not buying, just browsing for however many hours, thinking, oh, that's pretty, oh, look at the colors. Okay, I am definitely oversimplifying, but there are stereotypes that exist for a reason. And we found that these these sorts of websites can be reduced down into certain things that they do that will be likely to appeal to the majority of men and the majority of women. And here you get into hot territory, because psychology is always quite complex, and there are also personality differences between women and men that mean that some women will act a lot more like the normative man, and some men will act a lot more like the normative woman. So you've always got to take it with a pinch of salt. But what they found was that, in general, much of the male population will prefer flashy, interactive, animated content on websites. And the evolutionary psychologists among us might think, well, is that because they used to be predators going out hunting, seeing things that are visual, that are fast, that are moving, and is that something that they're primed to do? Well, quite possibly. They're also usually goal-oriented, and they like gamified websites. And I can attest to this. I don't really play. Who amongst the women here play online games on their phones? Okay, a few of us. What about the men? Who play games on their phones? Quite a lot more guys? Not that many more guys. Okay, interesting. Okay, so in general, if you gamify a website or content, you often get a lot of the younger generation joining in, because gamification seems to be fairly gender neutral for younger audiences in terms of their desire to play. But you do seem to find that men will play more in general than women. Sub-levels as well. Men seem to be less bothered by sub-levels. So when you've got the navigation, how many levels do I go down? As long as it's logical, I can get there. Women, we tend to be more attracted to websites' colors, but usually in a neutral, uncluttered background. And there are always exceptions to the rule. But in general, we also prefer fewer sub-page levels. We want it to be clear and easy and simple. If I can't go in and out and do it quickly, what's the point? Okay. Risk, trust, and privacy. This is something that is universally more applicable. The websites that we see now, and certainly in the design and digital industry, which is kind of where I'm naturally at home, tends to be a majority male environment. The internet was conceived by males, a male, Tim Berners-Lee, and then the developers and the people who create a lot of the content tend to be male. Social media, the communicative aspect, often you get a skew towards women, but it depends. And there's reason to suggest, there's a lot of research that suggests that it's actually men who are less concerned about privacy, that maybe it's a male-skewed environment. They're happier parting with, if you're a guy, you're usually happier parting with sensitive information like your phone number or your address. Women, much less so. In fact, female bloggers are much more likely to blog anonymously, not give their information to third parties, and have stricter privacy settings on their Facebook account. Again, this depends on the country that you're in. In Germany, the privacy controls are much tighter than in the UK, and in America, they're a lot looser in terms of personal protocol. Women also seem to, and you might find this surprising, perceive online purchasing as riskier than men. So there's a stereotype in the UK that women love to shop. Yes, we do. But we also only tend to shop from trusted sources and are quite skeptical and wary of non-trusted sources, of new places. Finally, I would like to draw your attention to a couple of persuasion techniques and the things that stop us from buying online. Has anyone here read about Robert Cialdini's 6 Principles of Persuasion? Okay. You've got to read that book, especially if you're in marketing. It's the cornerstone, the foundation for what kind of things influence and persuade us online. At the top of this slide, there are 6 of his principles, which I've applied to online environments, but he's basically the source of this knowledge. I wanted to talk you through quickly a little case study of what happens when a large company uses the complaints that social media has exhibited to them, that their customers have said. I'm actually not going to play the video, I'm sorry, it's quite long and we've only got about 5 minutes left. But basically what Domino's Pizza did in the States, they monitored their social media channels and saw that people were saying things like, it tastes awful, the pizza crust is like cardboard, I can't believe they get away with calling this pizza. And they created a campaign, you can look at online, Pizza Turnaround, Domino's Pizza Turnaround, that starts off with them telling you about Domino's and its establishment, its authority, and it's been there for years, and look at this nostalgic car, and aren't we amazing? Then they go into a dip, and they say, oh, we realized that our customers didn't like what we were selling. They hated it. We looked and listened at what they were saying, And we chose to act on it. So you go through the responses of people, seeing the responses of their pizza, and people are unhappy, and there's focus groups. And then eventually you get to the point where they say, right, well, we're going to, in a very American way, we're going to do better. And they're all doing team building. They work day and night. They create these amazing pizzas. They have a secret ingredient you can't see because they bleeped over her mouth. And you end up in this place where they go to the one woman who was really vociferously against this pizza, and they knock on her door and they say, oh, we can't wait to see what Adrienne thinks about this new pizza. And then, of course, it goes to be continued. So the point is, okay, they made it into a big PR thing, and they ended up getting a 14.3% sales increase in the first quarter of 2010, which was the biggest ever jump in sales in the fast food industry. And whilst they attribute this to this campaign, you do have to be, again, a little bit skeptical and wary as to how they're getting their figures. But it was after the campaign was launched, and it seemed to be successful. So if you're a big company and you're using social media to communicate with your customers, there are certain things that you can do to take negative criticism, incorporate it into your brand, we listen to our customers, we care, and then transform a potentially negative situation to your advantage. Okay, so there are barriers to buying online. The biggest one of these is a lack of face-to-face interaction, resulting in a lack of trust. 3 of the biggest cited reasons that stop us from purchasing online: lack of customer service, there's no relationship, you can't see who you're buying from; privacy and security concerns, which affect females more than males in general; and no real salesperson. But if you flip it and you see the kinds of stuff that we trust, all in all, how much is that there? 90% of us trust earned media, which is a general category for things like likes, ratings, testimonials, word of mouth communication. And of that consumer earned research, you've also, earned media, 70% or thereabout is exactly through consumer reviews, which is a huge amount. But the key element in all of these things is the relationship between people. We trust consumer reviews, not because we've met any of the people, but because we trust the herd to come up with a good idea that we can all follow. Social proof. If 20 people say this product is good, then I'll go for it. And that's one of the key elements to any sort of persuasion online. It rests in the psychology of rapport, relationship building, trust building, and reciprocity. If I give you something, you'll give me something back. So we require greater trust and confidence, whether we're buying into someone's message, whether we're buying their products. And what's interesting is, no matter who you are, when you're visiting a site for the first time, you're likely to scan it. Oh shoot. Oh, my ears obviously don't like the mic. Scan it subconsciously for trust cues. And what are trust cues? Oh, Christ. Okay. Trust cues. Trust cues are things like padlock signs or privacy signs. You know when you go on and you see like a PayPal with a little anchor symbol or a little privacy symbol? Are you familiar with these? Okay, these are trust cues that we naturally sign on unfamiliar websites to see if we can be safe purchasing with them. And in fact, when people come and visit your site for the first time, they'll subconsciously scan for functionality, for its design, and for your reputation to know if they can trust you. This all happens very quickly, subconsciously. So if you can at least be aware of these elements, then you can start building that into your web design to be more persuasive. So I'm going to wrap up, because I think we're just out of time. If you want to succeed online, you really have to think in terms of adopting this process. So understand who you're targeting, research, ask your customers who they are, what kind of demographic, how old are they, what age group do they associate with, what are their peers doing, what clothes do they wear, what kind of language do they use, how can you mirror their preferences if you're talking to them through a video, what can you do that they'll think, oh, they're like me. We tend to like things that are familiar. Communicate persuasively, storytelling, videos, narrative, empathy building, relationship building, and then selling with integrity, which we've skimmed over today. But the key thing there is around trust and security and privacy. And if you can show that you can do those things, you'll be much more persuasive online. I realize this is quite short and we don't have time for Q&A, but if you want to tweet to me, my handle is just at the bottom. That's my website, which you can find my email at. It's hello@thewebpsychologist. And that's my book, and I shall be doing tweets later today. If you're lazy at work or you're a bit bored at work because it's Friday, feel free to tweet to me. I'll be here until the end of the day. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Natalie. This really really gives us something to think about, and I hope that you will get many tweets.
I hope so.
And you will bring them to me. Thank you very much. I will give you some goodies, locally produced goodies, to bring you for this Friday evening at home.
Oh, yummy. Yay! Oh, that's fabulous. Oh. Thank you very much. That's really kind. Thank you.